I'm Vice Signal, and this is Cancel Lincoln.
Governments have historically had a way of clothing their naked pursuit of money and power with the shining robes of virtue and cosmetic self-defense. The United States government is perhaps the epitome of this. At present, the official government depiction of the Civil War is one fought to eradicate slavery. But as I have demonstrated in earlier videos, this is contradicted by documented events of the period. The historical evidence points to tariffs being one of the main reasons, if not the driving factor, with the other being the realization of a Hamiltonian vision of nationalism via a forceful consolidation of the states. Tariffs are taxes that the government forces people to pay on items shipped into the country. On the day of Lincoln's inauguration in 1861, 90% of the money the federal government took from the people for its annual budget was acquired through tariffs on ships full of goods coming into the country. For example, if a buyer in America ordered $100,000 worth of items from a seller in Europe and the tariff rate on imports was 50%, then the buyer would have to pay $50,000 to the government, added on to the cost of the item, simply for bringing the items into the country. 90% of the federal government's budget was financed by these tariffs, meaning that the coffers of northern politicians were sustained nearly entirely by them, and the vast majority of tariffs were paid by, you guessed it, the South, 87% to be precise. That's according to the American economist Thomas Patrice Kettle in his 1860 book Southern Wealth and Northern Profits. So essentially, the US federal government was funded almost entirely by the South, with the South seeing very little return on the forced investment. Therefore, Lincoln and the Republican-controlled federal government of 1861 were not going to see them permanently part from the Union before sacrificing as many American lives as the country could bear. Rather than negotiating fairer and less coercive ways of acquiring revenue, Lincoln created hell on earth for his countrymen. When asked at the beginning of the war, why not just let the South leave in peace, he replied, quote, "Let the South go. Where then shall we get our revenue?" Close quote. Lincoln's deviousness was obvious to many respected public figures of the time. As mentioned previously, Charles Dickens called the Civil War, quote, "solely a fiscal quarrel," close quote, and that the North's post hoc pretense of freeing slaves was, quote, "a piece of specious humbug designed to conceal its desire for economic control over the Southern states," close quote. Famous abolitionist leader Lysander Spooner also recognized the true economic motive of the war, mocking Lincoln as saying to the South, quote, "If you the South will not pay us our price, a high tariff, we will secure the same price and keep control of your markets by helping your slaves against you and using them as our tools for maintaining dominion over you, for the control of your markets," close quote. But in the history taught following the North's victory, the issue of tariffs being the primary reason for Lincoln's conquest of the South was largely whitewashed from the publicly propagated court historian narrative of the Civil War, and is still denied by establishment historians today, despite the evidence for it being explicit in the historical record and coming directly from Lincoln himself. Even in his first presidential inaugural speech, which was 1 month after the secession of the first 7 Southern states, Lincoln threatened to invade any state that would not collect tariffs on behalf of the federal government, saying, quote, "There needs to be no bloodshed or violence, and there shall be none unless it be forced upon the national authority. The power confided to me will be used to hold, occupy and possess the property and places belonging to the government, and to collect the duties and imposts. But beyond what may be necessary for these objects, there will be no invasion." Close quote. Cloaked within this statesman's style of rhetoric was a mafia-like shakedown. Lincoln was warning the South, "Pay me the protection fee, or violence will be coming your way." Saying that there will be no bloodshed or violence unless you do what I say is not an actual good faith commitment to nonviolence. But that wasn't the point. Lincoln knew the South seceded in large part due to the tariff and was laying the groundwork for invasion. It is no coincidence that the war between the states was initiated by Lincoln provoking a conflict over a tariff collection point, Fort Sumter. But he did not do so only to protect the coffers of the federal government and his own power, but the pockets of his corporate cronies as well.
Thank you for watching that episode of Cancel Lincoln. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel while you're at it. It really goes a long way in spreading the content. Thank you again, fellow rabble-rousers.
Also, check out the new Cancel Lincoln merch store, where you can help spread truth to the world and show your friends someone actually worthy of being canceled.